This week, we finally get the premiere of Ouija, the movie that Austin and I saw a trailer for a few months back, and we laughed and laughed and laughed. This movie looks just terrible. Just when Michael Bay's name pops up as the producer, Bradley Fuller is also a producer. You know, that's a pretty clear sign that you are in for what will most likely be a very bland and forgettable horror film, filled with the most predictable jump scares and annoying characters. So far, on Rotten Tomatoes, it does not have a score at all. I'm going to guess that means that no critics at all have gotten a pre-screen of Ouija, which, of course, is no surprise at all. It's very common that when a company makes a quick cash-in horror film, knowing it sucks, they don't want critics pre-screening it, because they don't want anyone to know it sucks. They don't want to risk that. They want to get as many teenagers in there as possible. I'm going to guess it's not going to go over too well. Will this be a box office success? It is possible. The one thing that does interest me about this movie is Olivia Cooke being one of the leads. She, in my opinion, is one of the best cast members in Bates Motel. I think she gives one of the best performances in that show. I think she's a solid actress. And I'm glad that she's getting work outside of that show. I'm kind of sad that one of those movies is this. I would like to see her do horror films, just not this piece of crap. I'm going to guess that she will give a solid performance. She'll probably do the best with what she has. But going back to what I was originally saying, Bates Motel is pretty popular, especially with young audiences, so that might be a draw-in for people. And then, of course, you have Jason Blum producing this, which I just want to say right now, is Jason Blum producing every American horror film that comes out nowadays? I swear, every horror trailer I get now in the theater says, from the producer of Paranormal Activity and Insidious. I mean, it's insane. You know what? I might just make a list, a clip show at some point on this channel, where I just show the clip from every trailer of a film that he has produced in the last 2 years, a horror film specifically, that says, from the producer of Paranormal Activity and Insidious. But it makes sense that they keep putting that in the trailers, because both of those movies are big hits, and Insidious and Paranormal Activity, of course, were big hits with the younger crowd, so it makes sense that they would put that in the trailer. So that and Olivia Cooke, I think, will draw some people in. I can see this doing fairly well at the box office. I could see it potentially reaching number 2, maybe number 1. I hope not. But I could see this being a hit. I could also see this not doing too well or just doing moderately well. With horror films nowadays, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. You put out a Paranormal Activity movie, yeah, you can guarantee it's gonna get a big hit at the box office. James Wan puts out a new horror film, yeah, it's definitely gonna be a big hit. But sometimes horror films just aren't as much of a big hit as they used to be. So I don't know about that. But I could see this being a big hit with the box office, but definitely not with critics. It just looks so bad. Nothing in the trailer interested me. Again, only Olivia Cooke. So I'm going to guess on Rotten Tomatoes, when they finally do have a final score, I'm going to guess somewhere between a low of 15, maybe 10%, and a high of 30%. I really don't see this going over too well with that. Last week, I talked about how on Rotten Tomatoes, there have been 10 critics who have reviewed John Wick, the new Keanu Reeves action movie that Austin and I are very much looking forward to. And all 10 of the critics liked it. It had 100%, and which gave me very high hopes. And so it's been a week now, and 4 more critics have reviewed it on Rotten Tomatoes, and those 4 also liked it. So 14 critics on Rotten Tomatoes, and still 100%. I'm not expecting it to stay at 100%. Of course, it's going to go down. It's just a matter of time. I'm sure by the end of the week, it'll probably be down to an 80. If it is as good as everyone says, which I hope it is, maybe 90% range. But no, there's no way it's going to stay at 100%. I'd be really jaw-dropped if it was. But nevertheless, 14 critics all giving a positive review, that's a very good sign. And that really brings my hopes up. When it comes to the over-the-top action genre, that's one of those things that many people can be cynical about, especially critics, especially Rotten Tomato critics. Many of them don't like to just turn off their brain and have fun. They like to critique it the same way they would critique, an Oscar-nominated film. But if all 14 critics are giving it a positive review, that's probably a good sign. So very much looking forward to this, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, it'll stay high on the rating. I'll be seeing John Wick with Austin and Sebastian on Saturday, which again, all three of us are very, very ecstatic to go see it. It looks like just so much fun. I'll be seeing that on Saturday, and then on Thursday or Friday before that, I'll go ahead and get Ouija out of the way. So I'll end my weekend on a high note, Let's get the crappy horror film out of the way first, and then let's end the weekend by seeing the awesome Keanu Reeves action film. As far as trailers go, I only watched one new trailer, but it was one that kind of sparked my interest. Another Nic Cage film coming out pretty soon called Dying of the Light. I had not heard about this, so I decided to check out the trailer. Did some research. It's written and directed by legendary writer and director Paul Schrader. This is the same guy that has written screenplays for Martin Scorsese films, including Taxi Driver. So needless to say, you got a big name behind it. From what I've read, Nicholas Refn, one of my favorite current directors, was originally assigned to direct, but then that got changed over time, and he's credited now as an executive producer of the film. We'll get back to that in a second. So plans changed, and this movie, I don't know when this movie was actually filmed, but it was in 2014, I don't think it was, because Paul Schrader made a post on his Facebook apparently, and I quote, "We lost the battle. Dying of the Light, a film I wrote and directed, was taken away from me, re-edited, scored, and mixed without my input." So, in other words, this movie was made, it got shelved, Lionsgate bought the rights, they re-edited the whole film, probably started off from scratch, and according to his words, re-edited it, scored it, and mixed it without any input by the director. And now they're releasing it. Let me tell you, that is a very, very, very bad sign. It could be that the film that Paul Schrader made may have had some issues and it needed some editing, but when you do that without the director's input at all, and a movie is put on the shelf and then Lionsgate just comes in, takes it, edits it, and quickly gives a 2014 release along with all the other Cage films that have come out this year, that's a bad sign. And after reading that quote, seeing in the trailer that Nicholas Refn is credited as an executive producer, I can't help but wonder if there's quotes that's put around that. If the director Paul Schrader had no input on the final film, how much input did Nicholas Refn have? I'm going to guess very little, if any at all. I would be very interested in seeing an interview with Paul and Nicholas after this film comes out and seeing, just hearing the whole story from their point of views. I have a lot of respect for Paul Schrader, and I love most of Nicholas Refn's work, so I would be very interested. And it's a shame, because you know what? Watching this trailer, it looked interesting. It has a solid premise. It got me interested. Looks like if this was actually directed by Refn, I bet it would have a more psychological tone to it. It looks like there's a little bit of one, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was further emphasized, which I would have been all on board for. And you know what? Going by this trailer, Nic Cage looks like he's going all out. He's giving his A game. He's giving his Joe performance. He's not slacking it. He's not sleepwalking through this just to get a check. He's giving it his all. And I am a Nicolas Cage fan. I love it when he goes all out. So, it wouldn't surprise me if the final product of this movie is a good movie that got lost somewhere in this mess. I'm going to guess it's just a mess that's been poorly edited and, poorly mixed at the last minute, and there's a good film that's just got lost somewhere in the process. It's a shame. But you know, we'll see. It's still early. But yeah, it's too bad.